Wow! I suppose you can, yeah.
My humble submission, apologies for being late. I have all sorts of lame excuses, but they're not funny, so I won't share them. My partner in crime, Mr. Zawinski. Oh, here he is. You okay, bud? You're alive, I think? You're alive?
Yes, I'm alive. Do not eat at the Chinese place.
Maybe I just got that. Would you not recommend that?
Okay, so we're going to talk about two things today. We're going to talk about the prehistory and the present condition of Mozilla.org as an entity. Miguel. Move the pointer to the, no, move the pointer to the right.
Put your hands up and step away from the pointer.
Not to touch anything. Okay, all right. So we're going to talk about Mozilla.org and what it does and how it relates to various things and how it might be able to help you or vice versa. Then we're going to talk about chunks of the communicator source code at a high level, so people are worried about knowing things about the code they shouldn't be. We're not actually teaching anything. And then most of the time will be spent doing questions and answers because a lot of this information, in fact, most things that there are to know about Mozilla.org and the communicator source release are out there somewhere to find out. And those are all the things we think people need to know. So if there are other things, we need to hear about them now and get questions and stuff. So we'll start then. We can do that again. Just one. Okay. Ignore that black thing on the left. So we'll go to the next one again. Just wasted slides here. I don't know why I looked at this guy. What Netscape did. The prehistory is kind of convoluted. Sometime a fair while ago, Jamie was talking about how if we were going to build products on Java, we were going to release source because you can't really avoid it in a meaningful way. Java preserves some pretty rich idioms in its bytecode, so decompilers are.
People were talking about noting that the Java decompilers are really good, and if we were going to ship a product based on Java, we're shipping class files, and people could just turn that into source, right? And that would be a disaster. So I sent some messages about how, well, it wasn't a disaster, and in fact, it was really beneficial for a lot of reasons. And one of the sales guys, Frank Hecker, saw this and struck a chord with him. So he wrote up something longer, took it selling it around to supermarket pants. And the rest is history. I learned that we were giving the source away at the same time you did when the press release went out. I didn't think it was going to happen, but that night I registered the domain and started writing all kinds of text for it, and spent a lot of time drawing whiteboards and explaining to people how it had to go. And here we are.
The why question is, the why question is probably an interesting one. Unfortunately, really anybody really has the whole picture on it. Obviously, we're not making direct revenue on the client, so we needed to do something. We needed to get something else out of it. And people within Netscape have been lobbying for a fair while. Frank Hecker, Jamie talked about it, Jamie, GPL tickets, and Linux aficionados and so forth. Trying to explain that it really does work, and we can build things on top of this, make point of sickness like 3 times a day. Making lots of money, they're profitable. Look, we can be profitable too. and so that part's a bit of a mystery, and unfortunately I can't tell you much about it. I don't really understand all of it, but we would happen, which I think is the most significant thing. The more interesting thing, perhaps, is what's supposed to come after that. And January 22nd, we made this announcement, and 22nd? Somewhere there it is. And the whole world sort of stopped for 3 months within Netscape while we did nothing but make sure we could send the source out legally and safely, but the NSA coming in with crowbars, and there are partners who had commercial software in there, 21, 23 different companies had bits and pieces from JVMs to widgets on the X front end. So there's a lot of work there, and the world stopped within Netscape. And now we want to sort of see what we can do so that, Netscape as a company has to derive some benefit from this, directly or otherwise, and also so that we can make it work. A lot of effort went into this, and make something good. Do you want to talk about the licenses? We're going to have to.
Yeah, this is where we just get it over. There are a number of good reasons that we're not using the GPL, which are not philosophical but practical. One of the reasons that a lot of commercial enterprises have a hard time stomaching the GPL is because it's so viral. they get terrified by the idea that someone might read this pretty complicated license and decide, oh, well, you've just given away all of your products. You wanted to give away this, but you've accidentally given away the whole thing because you misunderstood and you tainted it, and now you're completely screwed. Also, it's an all or nothing kind of deal. If you're giving away a product under GPL and you want to do anything effective with it, you have to give away the whole thing, because it's not interesting to just give away a product under that license and toss it over the wall and that's it. It's only actually useful if you're able to take back changes, which means that you're not the sole copyright holder. There are lots of people who contributed to it, and if someone gives you a change under GPL and you try to incorporate that back into your program, you have to play by the same rules. You can choose not to play by those rules, but that means you can't take changes back, and what's the point? So we actually have two licenses. One of them, the Mozilla public license, which actually came later as a result of all the feedback we got, is very much like the LGPL, in that if you make changes to the code itself, you have to give those changes back, and they fall into the same license. But it draws the boundary differently than GPL, in that merely linking with that piece of code doesn't taint. It's really easy to understand what does and what doesn't become infected by the license, which also makes it easier to give away pieces of your program and have a piece you're giving away and accepting changes back to. If you're using other programs that you're not giving away, for whatever reason, it also makes it an easy foot in the door for other people who might want to start playing around with open source without having to completely commit their entire business to it. Now, the other license, the Netscape public license, is just like the Mozilla public license, except it grants certain rights to Netscape specifically in appendix. And the reason for that is we had existing contractual obligations. We had contracts with people saying that we would sell them our source code, and then they could do whatever they wanted. Well, there were certain restrictions on it. But basically, we have contracts saying that we were going to give people rights to our source code and to, and future versions or 2 years or whatever of our source code. We're going to give them rights that LGPL and MPL don't give them. So we needed an escape hatch for that. They also wanted to reserve, there were bits and pieces of some of our libraries that are used in server products they didn't necessarily want to give away, and so there's some overlap where things aren't following like clean API boundaries. You need to work around that problem too. Oh yeah, another big problem is crypto. I'm sure you all know like all the problems with crypto, and you guys are into those ones. One thing that a lot of people don't understand about crypto is that all cryptographic software is export controlled. It's not true that you can write cryptographic software that only uses 40-bit weak encryption and you can just do whatever you want with that. That's okay. It's still classified as a munition. The difference is if it's weak crypto, the government will say, yes, you can ship that piece of software overseas, but they still have to look at it. It's still regulated, and they still get to decide. So if it's in source code form, they'll just never tell you can ship it overseas because it's so easy to modify source code to be strong encryption. Now what this means is we can't ship crypto source code. And as far as I can tell, it's not possible in the United States to write software under the GPL that uses crypto. Because GPL says you have to give away all the source code, and the US government says you can't give away all the source code. So you've got a problem. That's another reason for that. And yet we didn't use the BSD license because we did want to encourage people to give stuff back. That's a really good thing about the GPL, and it's why it's a big part of why it's been so successful. So we tried to find a sort of a middle ground between BSD and Yeah, we talked about. We spent.
Could you repeat that question?
Yeah, repeat the question. The question was whether we considered the artistic license, which is what the other license that Perl and its hangers-on are distributed under. Whether or not.
I don't remember the details of that, but I think that was basically like people looked at it and said, yeah, well, that's close enough to BSD that I don't remember. We did think about it pretty closely, but I don't remember.
I was there for that discussion.
Okay, what did we say?
And the basic problem is when we really looked at it, nobody could figure out what the artistic license really meant.
unfortunately pretty sick of talking about licenses, so we want to get it away early. The one thing I'd like to say additionally to that is something Miguel mentioned in his talk earlier, which is that the NPL and GPL aren't directly compatible, and we know that it sucks. And if there was a way that we could think of that would meet the needs that are placed on us already, and it would let us release the code for use of the GPL, we would do it, but it doesn't seem to be practical right now. So.
Is the NPL set up in such a way that you could convert it to GPL in the future?
Yeah, because that's one of the right. We're allowed to release that code under additional licenses. We need that for contractual obligation. So later on, we can certainly migrate that. Right? Let's go on to more interesting things.
Thank you.
Please.
There's also going to be another panel tomorrow late where people are going to just like bring about licenses for the whole thing. So we'll get that.
There's a shame on me out of that one.
So we have this Mozilla.org thing, which is like a part of Netscape, only not. We have that t-shirt. The role of Mozilla.org is many complex things, and part of the hard part of getting this thing set up was that we had to explain to people that we needed to do the kind of things that Linus did, sort of, that the FSF did, sort of, and Laird Wall does, and all this sort of thing. But we had to explain to people who didn't interact in those environments. So the closest thing we get to is source stewardship. Mozilla.org is sort of responsible for the integrity of Mozilla, which is this entity of source code with which we want people to do interesting things. And Jamie is the head steward of stewardship.
So one way of looking at this is that when you're working in this kind of environment, there's a pile of source code and it's out there. People can do what they want with it to some extent. But one of the things they can do is they can take it and they can change it and they can release it again. And one of the things that we don't want to have happen is have a whole bunch of different people doing this and going off in different directions and having a merge nightmare. And it's just ugly. You don't
say BSD?
What's that?
Can we say BSD?
Yeah. Sure. So basically, one thing that happens, that tends to happen in this environment is people realize what a bad idea that is, and mostly it's not a problem because people try really hard to cooperate and make sure there's only one body of source. And so one way of looking at what we're doing is Netscape really wants this project to succeed. So Netscape has decided, well, rather than just, letting the children go and hoping they invent language someday, Netscape's going to throw a lot of money at the problem and a lot of engineers and just try to kickstart this thing. So we see our role in Mozilla.org as just coordinating all these people who have stuff they want to get done and making it possible for them to communicate with each other and work together and, mom and apple pie, hygiene and infrastructure. Yeah. Okay. Customers are developers. Yeah, that's another important detail. Netscape is still shipping a product called Netscape Communicator and Netscape Navigator. And it's all the things that commercial software is. It's QA, and you have a support contract, and also it has crypto in it. And it has the lovely little meteor shower in the Netscape hand, and it's branded, and you can buy it on the Netscape website, it comes in a box, and all that stuff. That is not what Mozilla.org does. Mozilla.org releases source code. So Mozilla.org's customers are developers, and one of Mozilla.org's customers is the Netscape Client Engineering Group, who work with Mozilla.org, write code, send code back, get code out, and then at some point turn it into a product. And there are presumably, eventually, going to be other people who do the same thing, who aren't Netscape, but who are working largely off the same source base. So that's why we don't ship binaries from Mozilla.org, because binaries are for end users, and our customers are developers.
Which segues nicely into discussion of the relationship with Netscape. What I've been thinking farther ahead, being here on time and stuff, and something that Jamie can draw a pretty picture on. Basically, the relationship with Netscape should be, other than the fact that they're throwing a pile of money at us, the same relationship we have with other people who do stuff with Mozilla Source, which is something that Jamie alluded to earlier. If Red Hat wants to do a customized version for its, if you want to do Extreme Mozilla or something, then they can do that, and that's an important client base for Mozilla, and Netscape is an important client base for Mozilla. So Mozilla.org tries to remain relatively isolated from the political goings-on and to some extent the product scheduling and so forth of Netscape. It's their responsibility to ship binary that they want to put their name on. That's not Mozilla Org's problem. They pay the bills, so there's complications there.
Well, more importantly than just paying bills, there are an awful lot of developers inside Netscape, and our job is making all of the developers' lives easier. And right now, like almost all of them are inside Netscape, so we're trying to coordinate with them and do that. But it's not. It's easy to look at this and worry that, well, I mean, Netscape's paying their salaries. They're really just like beholden to Netscape's commercials. But the thing is, like, if that was true and if people believed that, it wouldn't work. No one would send their changes to Mozilla.org. Like some other group would appear and they do their source release because they're allowed to, and everyone would just go over there because those people were doing the right thing and we were a bunch of stupid flyers. And like even the Netscape management realizes this, so that's really not happening. Oh, I think we should introduce the team. Okay, so let's see. There's Tom Pateman, who was the original engineering manager at Netscape. He's the pointy-haired manager who keeps the suits out of our way. Then there's me, Brendan, and Lloyd. Brendan Ike and Lloyd Tabb, and we're sort of like sharing the Linus role. My job is, well, first I wrote like pretty much all the website except like technical documentation about the code. My job is deciding what Mozilla is. Should Mozilla do this? Should it go in this direction? That kind of thing. And also what the mission of the Mozilla.org organization is. Brenda's job is coordinating with module owners. Explain what those are in a minute. Basically, there are two people working on two different libraries and doing the design that ensures that those two people can talk to each other and making work stuff and use APIs that make sense and that sort of thing. Lloyd's job is controlling the tree. He decides whether you can check in and whether you're following the proper procedure to make sure that like things build and you don't screw everything up and the builds all before 2 weeks. And he's really good at that. Then there's Chris Ye, who is working with Lloyd. They're sort of doing a job together. Terry Weissman, who has been working on a lot of tools stuff, like our bug system and our CDS interface, and just pretty much like all the tools, anything that needs to be done.
We'll talk more about the tools.
Yeah. The new guy.
New guy.
I haven't met him yet. He started like the day I got on the plane to come here.
So there's a group there of 5 now? 6 now.
Oh, and of course, Mr. Shaver there. He doesn't actually work for us because he has another full-time job, so he just does Mozilla. Mozilla.org is his second full-time job.
But it's rewarded so far, so look at that. I'm Jamie's personal slave. So, tools and support. And this is one of the things that I really put you on. I was really tired.
Let's flip through this. I haven't seen this slide yet.
No, we do the basic stuff that you do when you're supporting a project. Super stuff that Red Hat does for development and Debbie told you, Debbie honestly. Mailing lists and news groups and the website people put content on. People other than Mozilla.org actually control sections of the website. Elliot Lee, Elliot controls the portion of the tree that talks about the GDK front end and that's not really the interesting stuff. We provide a CDS server, which right now is like painfully slow, and if you use it, you'll understand what we mean. We put a user limit on it so you can actually connect and get some source while that was still the current source. We do source updates every hour to that server, so it was actually a real issue. We now have these big boxes that make our ISVs have happy dreams.
You wouldn't believe how giddy they are with these machines.
Yeah, we drew a little bit.
What kind of machines?
They're big Spark things.
They're big multi-processor Sparks. They've got like 80 gigabytes of disk.
We can't power them up in one building, we gotta move to another one.
Yeah, they run on 220. We don't have room for them in the machine rooms. They're like, oh, we can put them over in this building over here, but well, we have to run more fiber. It's just so the machines aren't quite up there, but they're really short.
Well, you think Bonsai is I don't know how many people here have seen or heard of Bonsai. That's pretty good.
Bonsai.
Sort of.
Can we get it?
Yeah, probably, eventually. So, I've been asking, yeah, you get that too, I think. We've been asking this question since long before Bonsai was available externally. And the basic summary is this. Everybody who thinks about the problem seriously realizes that we should release the source, because we're not selling it on anything. It doesn't hurt anybody. If somebody improves Bonsai, we get, I mean, all the reasons we're releasing the source code from Mozilla are good.
Netscape's business is not really selling development environments anyway, so.
But though they confuse themselves with that. So what needs to happen here is VP-like objects of the appropriate proportions need to say, make it so. And then the source will appear, and there will be something in a little box on the front page, and you'll click and download all the Perl and tickle magic.
This is stuff that's grown over a couple of years.
What is it? Yeah. You have to go on and find out. No. Bonsai does all the things that CBS should have done before, perhaps. It's a web-based interface to let you watch check-ins by tree and by branch over a certain period of time, view diffs graphically.
See all the check-ins by a single person. It's a web interface to CDS, but it's really great. It's so incredibly easy.
Internally within Netscape, Bonsai is used by the person called the tree sheriff, and Lloyd and Chris Ye are tree sheriffs. They decide when you close the tree, nobody can check in. Use that because it's not building. So before people start checking stuff in and making it not build even more, or if we manually test things, we get back to a stable state. The idea is that you're never more than a day from having something you can at least compile and run on most of your platforms. So yeah, Bonsai means well, if it's close to the tree.
Okay, here.
Let's go.
So Tinderbox is the we've got a whole bunch of machines that just do continuous builds. Like no one uses them; they just sit there and compile over and over and over, check out the tree. Some of them do full checkout, some of them do updates. And when they're done, they send their status to the Tinderbox server, and Tinderbox is how you tell when the tree's on fire. Tinderbox is another web page that has this graphical representation. There's a column for each build, and time goes up, and they're yellow if they're still building, they're green if they completed successfully, and red and with animated flames if they didn't. And basically, if you look across a column and it's all green, everyone's doing their job. And if there's any red, then someone gets smacked. So that's what that's all about.
Tinderbox, of course, because knowing the build is broken is useful. You can figure that yourself by trying to compile it.
Well, it is really useful to know that the build's working on your platform, but some other loser over here broke it. And even in that situation, you shouldn't check in because you're just going to destabilize things further. Our rule is you never, ever check something in that breaks the build on any platform.
With or without debug? Because the CVS tree has been broken for a while. If you didn't compile with debug.
Oh yeah, yeah. There is a virtually unbounded number of combinations of compile options and platforms. And it just gets worse when you do stuff like it gets different. You do stuff like you have less keep in. You've got different kernel versions, different libc versions, and you've got 1,000 different platforms and architectures and compilers.
Anyway, what I said was, the rule is you never check something in that breaks the tree. The problem is, it's really hard to obey that rule, right? Everyone tries really hard, it happens anyway. That's why we got Tinderbox, so we can figure out exactly when it went wrong and what happened, look at the logs. And the other important thing that Tinderbox lets you do is, if the tree's broken and you can't build, you can look and you can see, well, 30 minutes ago it was building, so I can check out with that date, CDS, and then now I've got something that works, and I can do my development and get on with my life. And then, once they fix the problem, you can check it later.
Are these build machines on multiple architectures?
Yes.
So you have NT boxes and Macs?
And Max for the fun. Tinderbox talks to Bonsai, so you can go and say, between this build and then, it broke, it didn't, this is what changed, view the build, all that sort of stuff. It's actually really handy. When you're doing cross-platform development, and Netscape really does do a lot of cross-platform development. There are 21 per unit platforms we should be more on.
But those are easy. They're getting stuff to build on Mac and
You have all
existing.
those platforms in Mozilla?
What's that?
You have all those platforms in Mozilla? Or you just build for
You mean in Tinderbox?
No, that place where you're doing this build, are you doing these builds up in here, or are you doing it down in Oxford?
Well, the way it works is Tinderbox is the web server, basically, the thing that collects all the data and presents it to you. The build machines are like wherever. Right? They're all inside Netscape right now, but they basically just fire off an email to the human running on the Tinderbox machine. tell them what's up, tell them what's up.
We're collecting boxes. There's a migration happening of the Mozilla source from inside Netscape's firewall to outside Netscape's firewall. The engineers within Netscape who work on Communicator will check their changes in and out of the same tree that everybody else in Net uses, which is, as you might imagine, a highly scary prospect to a lot of people. So behave. And the same thing's happening with a lot of the tools. The ones I moved outside, the Tinderbox servers will eventually move outside. The Netscape problem that they have internally is a little different because they have to be sure not only that Mozilla builds, but also that the commercial version builds.
Can you talk about modulators now, or is that later?
Now it seems the right time, so we'll get into that here.
Can I ask another question about your box?
Sure.
People have to get all green flags before you can commit something to the CVS.
Yeah.
That's the rule.
Oh, you don't, it doesn't mechanically enforce that.
Right.
But Lloyd is a large man. and there's the same sort of culture of reputation that you have within the most resource communities, right? You break the build every time you check in, all of a sudden you can't check in anymore. It's a mystery to everybody.
There are rules that are enforced about
That's Lloyd's job.
Lloyd is bad cop. Okay, so the way, sort of the development structure is, the 6 of us in Mozilla aren't actually writing code. The people who are writing code are inside Netscape Client Engineering and out on the net and the GFA folks and whatever. And Mozilla is a pretty big program. So it's divided, there are libraries and sections of libraries, and each section we call a module, and it's not like divided by file, it's conceptually. And there's an owner for each module. And that owner is at the end of the day, they're responsible for what's in their module, and in particular, whether it builds. That doesn't mean they're the only person allowed to check in. That person can say, well, these people are on my team, and I trust them, and I vouch for them. And so, those people will get accounts on the CVS server that allows them to check in. And if they screw up, well, they better not. So that's the people who can touch the write of the CVS server. Then there's the read-only CVS server that anyone in the world can check out from and no one can check into. And we're actually setting things up so those can be mirrored, and it's going to be really, really, really soon. Promise. Did anybody do that? Most of Brendan's job is dealing with module owners, deciding who should be a module owner, making sure that the right people are talking to each other sort of at a low-level technical level, at the code level.
Brendan has sort of the keys to the nuke too in terms of things you don't want to have to do, but if they have to happen, the man does it, which is where you have a module owner who's totally derelict in their duty, and somebody else has to take over for that. This is actually an interesting side effect within sort of the Netscape organization of the source release is that, if Netscape does the wrong thing with the client, someone else will do the right thing with the client. And at that point, Mozilla would very well say, you did the wrong thing. You don't own that part of the Mozilla source tree anymore, right? These people over here did IMAP better, or these people over here did PNG correctly. And that's how that stuff migrates. There are owners of code that are outside of Netscape already, although it's still a small fraction.
We expect there to be a lot more.
It's not
going to take a while because all the people who know that code like the back of their hand right now are inside Netscape. That's going to change over time.
What do you think is going to be Netscape's core competency when all this washes out? Do you think there's going to be one area of the browser that's going to be like Netscape like that?
Well, there's a lot of stuff that Netscape. Well, one of the things that Netscape does is ship products and do QA. Another important thing that Netscape does is security, all the pretty good stuff, which I'll let you know. Actually, no, we'll talk about it later. There are also various other libraries and things that the Netscape product makes use of that we don't know. Like, for example, Java. We didn't give away the Java source because it's not ours. It belongs to Sun. And they do not. If anyone of you would like to convince them otherwise, we would be really happy. So,
I'll try it. That Netscape
Like in terms of features, or
somebody else might do IMAP, somebody else might do this or that, somebody in Australia might do crypto. Netscape will do
Yeah, it's hard to say. It depends on whether someone else steps up to the plate and does something that Netscape might accept.
Yeah, I don't think Netscape is really cares terribly that somebody else is doing. I mean, there's obviously some love of your baby ownership that happens with the code and the individual author level, but I don't think Netscape says whatever happens, the module order for this has to be inside. Right? If somebody's going to do a better job, Netscape does not mind paying their people to do other things. Right? That's the shareholders understand that on the first try.
There are no crypto books. It is illegal to export crypto books. There are no.
And why not ship Mozilla offshore and let it be crypto all at once and let them send it back to the U.S.? Because it's not illegal to import 200-bit encryption to the U.S.
Here's the thing. You know about the CryptoZilla folks, the Australians?
Yeah.
So, great, they did that. They plugged SSL and EAY into Mozilla, and like that's pretty cool. And they did it way faster than I thought that anyone could. Very impressive. Okay, now what do we do? Right? You can go and you can download it from the Australian site. More power to you. I can't check it into the Mozilla tree because if I check it into the tree and someone in Finland does a checkout, I've exported it. Right? So we can't touch it.
Well, here's the issue. Right now, all the money for Mozilla.org, pay for the big sum boxes and the engineer side and so forth, comes through Netscape. So if they move Mozilla.org to Finland, which is a popular place for software, they are aiding and they're providing resources to that. That is like aiding and abetting, and the NSA will have none of it. And Netscape still wants people to ship products that have crypto in them.
Okay.
It is highly successful, but there are no rules.
This is an important point. When you're dealing with export regulations, you can't use logic. It's not like you look at the law that's written down and you say, I am obeying the letter of that law. Because it's not about the letter of the law, it's about intent. If the NSA says you're being a bad boy, by definition, you're being a bad boy. and they hold a very big stick over Netscape in particular. Like, you know, the PGP guys get away with a lot more because the PGP guys don't have to have an export license. Netscape has other products that have crypto in them that they need to export. And whether they can export them is at the discretion of the NSA. So Netscape can't just obey the letter of the law. Netscape has to make the NSA believe that Netscape is doing the right thing. And it's really hard, especially when you don't believe it's the right thing.
You're misassigning your enemy there. I think a close examination would show that you don't have as much trouble with the fort as you do with Louis III. He just gets the fort to front card. And you probably need to keep that in mind when you're talking to them.
Well, I mean, it could be little green men sending signals to somebody's brain. It doesn't mean we're not really concerned about where the restrictions come from. Is it really the State Department? No, of course it's not.
Yeah, I mean,
is it the NSA? Maybe.
The fact is, if Netscape does something that pisses them off, and as a result of that, well, not really as a result of that, but just coincidentally, Netscape doesn't happen to get an export license for Communicator 5.0 when it's time to actually ship the product, that's not so good. It doesn't matter where it's coming from.
The shareholders understand that too. Sometimes they're dangerous in practice. So we get back to another tool, and we'll get back to this in government. Mozilla is the Mozilla bug tracking system. It's empty. It's now been linked up with the bug and request for enhancement and silly user feature thing that lives inside Netscape for all of its products together, which is also empty. And
well, it's just that all the bugs have been closed.
Yeah, there's just enough. The idea behind Mozilla is that the developers who are owning code, checking code, you're responsible for the shape of code, have names there. You find a bug, you go in, you find the module owner that you think is responsible for the bug, and you file it against them, and they can query their bugs. It's pretty standard bug tracking stuff.
It's a bug system. The tricky thing here is that Netscape has already had a bug system for a long time. And it's a bunch of like HTML front ends that we wrote that's built on top of a Scopus database, which is just enormous, and it handles all the Netscape products. And the frontline customer support people use it in a different way, and it's got tentacles everywhere. And it has a lot of really useful information in it, like if there were any bugs, they would be there. So Bugzilla is the outside part of it that people on the outside can query and add bugs to and all that, and they're talking to each other now. That's one of the things that Perry's been working on recently. Now the problem is that inside, we've got all of these zillions of bugs in the system already. Some of them are for other products, some of them are for Mozilla. But the thing is that much like the source code itself, there's stuff in those bugs that it could be really bad if people outside the company saw. Not just swear words, but things where someone could sue you for libel, snippets of crypto source code, all kinds of things. I mean, it's a big legal mess. So one of the things that's going to happen over time is as people inside Netscape are looking at the bugs, there's like a checkbox there they can click. Yeah, this bug is okay. We can show that to the outside world, and then they'll be coming together. It's all happening that way. Mozilla is still not quite ready for prime time, but being worked on.
I should use it anyway. It's sort of like Mozilla though. Yeah, just go next.
I'm sorry, a simple question. What does Mozilla contain besides Navigator?
What do you mean by besides Navigator? See, we choose these wacky product names to mean different things depending on what you're talking to someone does.
Well, I heard you say IMAP. So
IMAP, yeah. Well, see, IMAP is in Mozilla. Okay. Interestingly enough, but you still can't do mail with it.
I think the question really is what's the difference between what shipped as Communicator 404 and what's in the Mozilla source?
Right.
One of the things that's not there is crypto. One of the things that's not there is Java. One of the things that's not there is an important part of the mail news story. And that's being, well, all right, the mail news story.
They're on the corner.
No, this is good.
There's this database inside the mail news code, which they use for all kinds of caching things, saving NMTP headers and then summary files for your mail folder so that things work quickly. And this is a database that Netscape bought from this other company and signed a license which is, shall we say, not the best license as far as what we want to do with it today. So basically, taking the code and pulling this database out such that we don't get sued is really hard, and people have been working on it. Bits and pieces of the mail code are out. There's really 3 layers. There's the low-level protocol implementations, and those are out because those weren't taken at all, and they actually live in the network. Then there's like all the UI stuff and the buttons and the scrolling lists and all that, and that's out. Now lives in the FE directories. And then there's like all the logic that actually makes a mail reader be a mail reader, and that stuff kind of like has this database all through it. So people are working on sanitizing that right now. And bits and pieces of it appeared.
Yeah, the relevant, if you're going to go on Focus Code or Bonsai and watch it all happen, there's a link off the Bonsai pages to the mail and news landing, which is Normandy. The Normandy branch has the merge back and forth, and there's a terribly complicated plan for getting all the stuff in there so that they can build and so that you can do mail and news usefully with Mozilla. And people do care about this problem. So it's not like we just said, well, nobody really uses mail and news in Communicator anyway, so if you want to chip it. It is something that people are actively working on. Calendar,
Yeah.
Conference, no idea, probably not.
You check broker, there's a Corba interface, which was in the product. And
The core interface is a big pack of Java classes. That's really all it is. And that's owned by Vision, who have other opinions similar to the ones you would expect from all the other people at Netscape in this product currently. They don't want us to just give that product away. I mean, it's an even more sort of obviously problematic case than the one with the database in the mail and news library, because if we gave you the Corba stuff, we would be giving you the entire VisiBroker for Java product. And that would do a lot of bad things to the bottom line for Visagenic, and they're sure we're going to stand that. So we can't really do that. There have been people who've been talking about doing Corba stuff under the MPL or NPL or some other PL.
If you have a Corba implementation you'd like to contribute, we'd like to hear about it.
Mozilla has not. I am absolutely certain that we have looked at putting Corba has not reached like the top half of our list yet of things we need to get back to the client and things we need to have happen. I don't know what the Corba story is on Communicator. I don't know what the Corba story is in Mozilla. If you have ideas and you want to make Corba work in Mozilla, we're taking patches. I mean, there's lots of stuff there. We like all that work in. We want all this good stuff in Mozilla. We just stuff. No too big.
I heard you're going to make part of the directory service available. Is that just the client or also the directory service?
You're probably talking about the LDAP SDK release.
Right.
That's source. That's for the. It's a client portion of LDAP. You can use it to LDAP enable your your applications, and I presume it's under the same license terms as Mozilla.
Is it there or is it published after the client?
If it's not there, it should be really, really soon. I'll look into that when we get back. It's definitely happening. We can see that a lot more authority now. They've actually released the source to the client. We said this 10 months ago. Yeah, we're going to release the source to the SDK. No one will start playing around. No, yeah, that's coming out. I think a lot of the SDKs that we have, there's a messaging SDK that talks to mail and news servers and does workflow things, whatever that is. A lot of that stuff's coming out there. They're planning to do source release, but that is not the server product. I'm going to say like 10 words of the server products, which are that Market recently announced that we're supporting servers on Linux. I was real happy. I was a little surprised. I was happy to. More than that, I do not know. I don't know what the schedule is. I don't know what the license group we have to get it from. I don't know what libraries it's linked against. I don't know what kernel you'll need. But servers are appearing on Linux, and people internally can do meaningful things with them now. So work is being done. That's not what it is.
I'm sorry, I wanted to ask a follow-up to the previous question about IMAP. When you said that, was that just an example? Because I know that I attend the IMAP working group where I have but we've always used the word Netscape as a first word. And IMAP is because we feel like that's in fact somebody.
We're getting patches. No. IMAP was an example, but it shouldn't be discarded because it was an example. If you guys produce better IMAP, like I suspect, I think the JPEG guys are doing a better JPEG, and someone's got to do a better CG. We'll take those patches, right? I mean, if you guys want to own all of IMAP, that's okay. If you want to just fix the parts that really irk you, that's okay too.
So one of the issues about that is, as I understand it, dropping like C client or something in as the IMAP implementation would be kind of hard because, well, I guess we're talking about Netlib. The way Netlib works is the network library. There's a lot of history in this. The first version of Mozilla did not use threads at all. It still felt like a pretty live multi-threaded application, and the way we did that was with the nothing up my sleeve creating state machines. So all of Netlib is written as non-blocking state machines. It does non-blocking reads, and you have to like save and restore everything in these big state objects. And it is pretty much a royal pain in the ass, but it works really well. And you can argue about like whether it's easier to program using a blocking threaded model and dealing with block intention, or whether it's easier to write state machines. The fact is, back in '94, we did not have the option of using threads. It wasn't there. The way the world works now in that is everything's non-blocking. So if you've got a protocol implementation that's written in a blocking style that you want to drop in, you're kind of a roll over. Maybe you can do it using threads in some funny way, but it's hard. Now there are threads in Mozilla now in a few places. Notably, if you're running Java, it's got threads. And that's why we have threads now, because, well, we needed them for Java. And so we had to go and make that work. It's a lot of work that we did. Or some combination of us. And getting our threading model to work on, like, 20 platforms, whatever, is no walk in the park. So we got this library called NSPR, for Netscape Portable Runtime, which is kind of this sort of like libc and threads, except it presents a common API and backend to work on all of our platforms. And it has support for native kernel threads on platforms, a bunch of platforms, and also for doing threads by hand in user space by encapsulating select and stuff like that. And our server products use this library, and they tend to use kernel threads, but the client always uses user threads. And the reason for that is that on almost every platform that we ship on Unix, Xlib is not thread safe. So you can't use threads. You have to encapsulate select and then like hold a lock when the X is doing stuff so that the various threads can touch X. And so that's what NSPR is.
May I add a few things about NSPR is that first, Dean Godet from the Apache group is working with an SPR, and it seems that it works very well, and probably the Apache 2.0 may be built on top of an SPR.
Yeah,
and the
we're really
second
happy
thing,
about that. That's great.
and the second thing is that Robert Esto, which was an Apache developer some time ago, is now working on getting Café, the free Java JIT implementation, working on top of an SPR.
That's really important. I get a lot of mail and I get a lot of IRC messages and stuff. People want to know, why did you stick the black-down JDK into the Netscape Communicator? And the short answer is because it wouldn't work at all. And the longer answer is because it wouldn't work at all. There's a problem where, sorry? We'll have that fight over here.
Yeah.
What do you mean the Java stuff? I get it. The issue there is that Java has its notion of the way threads should work, and the rest of Communicator has a notion of the way threads should work. And if they don't agree to like a really small level of detail, you go to hell in a handbasket. So there's talk of getting JVM vendors to use NSPR because it really does work on their various platforms and stuff, which would mean that you could migrate, you could have sort of compatible threads, and that's important for doing not only sort of normal Java stuff, but also things like live snap, and I think the security model requires notion of the thread stacks as well. Yeah, there's all sorts of good stuff there.
I think an SPR is going to end up being really popular because it's a nice, isolated module. It doesn't have a lot of dependencies on anything else.
And it looks like Unix, and then you can build Win 16 and Mac, which is nice. You can the thread model in SPR is kind of neat because it's got these three modes. It's got user, it's got native or pthreads or something. And then it's combined, and you can have, which is something I guess Solaris does as well. You've got pools of kernel threads. On top of that, you've got larger, presumably pools of user threads. You can mix and match it. There's a lot of flexibility in that.
Windows, what are you building there?
Cloud of Doom. Visual C++ 4.2. A lot of people use Visual C++ 5.0, which makes the build engineers really happy, as you can imagine. Some people have tried Borland to moderate degrees of success. We do not use DJ, GPP, we do not use the SIGWIN stuff. It's pretty much Microsoft compilers for everything right now.
We're taking matches.
The environment is one of the things we've got a lot of patches on so far. Crazy people versus Jess sent in patches to make it work on the Motorola 68K stuff. People are doing auto-conf work, which is a big deal, and I hope it goes well, because it could really ruin someone's life otherwise. Sorry?
Have you tried the SIGWIN or other GUI?
I know we haven't on, for doing GUI stuff. We use MFC, and for that reason we'll all go to hell. It may not be, people banter back and forth and have secret ways about the fact that Borland stuff is better, and you can use these things, we should all use port GTK, and use TK, why not use it? And there are good answers to all of that, but the only real answer is when we started this, we had MFC, and it was really what we used. That's what we chose. And now, a lot of stuff really needs to be on MFC. Patches, right? Making it run on Borland is not too hard. Making some of the stuff that is non-graphical in the Mozilla tree build on Windows with the new tools can be done. All of the Raptor stuff that builds, that doesn't involve graphics, sorry, I can't say that word anymore. All of the new layout stuff that builds on Windows within graphical can be built with the Google compiler. I've never done it, but people who impress me daily tell me it can be done.
Tell us about Raptor.
There is no Raptor. It's the new layout engine. There are other people who have software called Raptor.
Okay, what's the win of the new layout?
The win? Well, it's sort of the product of 4 years of painful lessons about layout.
Yeah, well, the first layout was written to be a world that's very different from what today. People want to do things with layout that you didn't know they were going to want back then. And it's really overcoded. It's been hacked on a great deal and does way more than expected to do. Codes like that. One of the wins about doing layout is that it's fast. Like when you resize a window, like tables and things will just like reload and then like I have to document it.
Wow.
That actually works. That actually works in the old layout engine now too. This group of like courageous hackers, Chris Toshoff and Ashit Ranjan and somebody else. I'll get mail from later, I'm sure. Did this thing called Mariner. If you take Mozilla and you put it on like a page with lots of tables, it actually renders www.microsoft.com really, really well. There's no good test, Flash doesn't work. And you resize, you do a page resize, you whatever, it's even more effective. You can see it through the reach well with that characteristic pause and flicker and loss of all your document state. So that's in there. One of the cool things about the new layout that is after is that, I don't know how you saw Miguel's talk earlier, it's an XPCOM component. It's got this interface and this thing we call Web Widget that talks to the XPCOM netlib and the XPCOM HTML parser and the XPCOM layout section, which is what was known as Raptor. So you can use this in your application relatively more easily than you can use the existing layouts. Just to say it all.
Now, you're talking about all the different components. The one thing that a lot of people know is, where does the memory go, and which component is sucking it off?
If you go to Mozilla and you do -u float, you actually get a lot. No. Bottom of my heart that nobody went in there and said, you know, we're not mousing enough in this routine. It's organic software. I think the way we're supposed to talk about that. I don't know a lot about it.
Because the internet is big.
Poor jokes.
There's a lot of stuff in there that can be optimized. There's a lot of stuff that has been in Mozilla from, I mean, I don't know whether you're actually talking about where the memory goes in Mozilla or where the memory went in Communicator 405.
What is it?
I should show you the patches. There's a lot of memory, a lot of resource stuff that went down. There have been stuff like fixed map usage has been cut in half in Mozilla, so you can have a couple left for other applications. Palette stuff is better. We don't make too many round trips to the server. We do better font stuff. There are memory leaks in Communicator. One of my things related to creating and destroying top-level windows. Just a little bit, but we make it up on volume. I think image lift. I mean, there's a lot of stuff in there. If you look at the Mozilla code, you understand that there's a lot of hair there. And if you've been following the less peak discussions, people will talk about the fact that on this motif, you have to malloc the memory. And on that motif, it mallocs the memory for you. And so there's a lot of stuff like that in the routines where the APIs changed and people were, mallocing and that pointer was getting thrown away. People run Purify on it, but I mean, it's a depressing chore. It's getting better. It's really easy to point and say it's a lot faster now because we took out that darn Java stuff. And while Java was large, but it wasn't the whole problem. People are doing optimization efforts, but I can't point at one component and say if you build without that, you're okay. If we could, I assure you we could have done it. So he's gone, and I'll skip through all the stuff I want. Let's go to the next page. We're starting to talk about it. Yeah, you should move the point back out of it. There you go. Getting source out. See, we just had this discussion. I sort of sat there and said, the V in FFS is not there. You don't see it. Put the mouse over. No. Getting source out. I looked at the source tree this morning, and all the parts that I knew what they did, and what I thought could be possibly useful to applications other than Mozilla. I mean, there's a lot of stuff in there like libpref. Like, you don't need it. I'm not sure we need it. The stuff that's in there, the big distinction is between front end and XP code. The XP is front end, XP is cross-platform. One of the revolutions that's going on in Mozilla land right now is that more and more of the front end is becoming cross-platform. If you've worked on like GTFE or QTFE or the X brand, you'll know that there's a lot of code in there that really has nothing to do with the fact that it's running under X, or even that it's necessarily running under Unix. It's just that the API would evolve, the behavior would evolve, and they would do that on the front end side rather than re-architect the back end. For right or wrong, it happened. That's one of the wins in new layers and after. Is that a lot more stuff is really cross-platform, so you have to write it once, which means you can write it better, which means that it can be made faster. I mean, all the good economy scale elements are there. So that's sort of where you find stuff. You're looking for a way to add a button or find out how we do some neat UI trick. Like lose the entire window when you're doing DNS. That's all in the front end stuff. All the other stuff is XP. The big XP thing is NSPR, which is the directory NSPR hub. And that has all the things that make it palatable in any sense to build on palatable platforms. It has the threading stuff. It has our lock and semaphore and monitor abstractions. It has malloc for the Mac if it doesn't hurt you. It has whole piles of stuff in there for doing like 64-bit things on platforms that don't support 64 bits. You can have long longs in places where you really don't, which made Java possible. The libraries that are in there is a libs directory. Libnet is where the protocols live right now. All your protocols are in there. You got your INAP, you got your POP, you got your Gopher, all right?
Yeah.
Because then you can look at the client and say, we're an interface to everything. You know, if it's HTTP, if it's FTP, you got it. If it's Gopher, you've got it. Everybody knows no one else like Gopher, so they use the client. All sorts of stuff in there. That's moving. The new modular netlist will save the world and make us all rich. It's now in the network directory. That's got a more modular setup so that if you watch a recent Mozilla link line, if you're really bored, you'll see that there's a bunch of like -L HTTP URL, -L Marin URL, -L JS URL, that kind of stuff. You can add new URL types much more easily than you could. If you want to do, say, a front end, what I mentioned this earlier, you want to do a front end for some shell, you know, when you make your file manager, you can have an exact URL type and it can go and do the real thing. libmine is, I said that, sorry, 20 spots. Oh, that's mine was like my last slide here. Go away for libmine, as Jimmy will say when he gets back, is like the coolest mine parsing engine in the world. So there's no need to run anything else. It does a lot of neat stuff with mine things. I don't know any what the code is, so I can here to explain it. JavaScript is in there. There's 2 versions of it. Okay, not 2 versions. That's somewhere. There are 2 variants in the tree. There's JSGraph and JSSource. JSGraph is totally standalone. One thing you need to use the JavaScript engine in JSGraph is the code in the JSGraph directory. Has stubs for some of the NPR functions we use. That's where all the development of JavaScript happens. We'll port it out to the JSSource automatically. JSSource is the JavaScript engine that's built on top of NSPR. Those are the differences. I work on JavaScript, so I can put it up there.
JavaScript and how we get some of the problems in the language.
Okay. Who owns JavaScript? The ECMA, European Computer Manufacturers Association, owns JavaScript. We'll talk about this later. You hit a button here. If you mean problems in the language, problems in the syntax and behavior of the language, you've got ECMA. And I'd like to hear about them too, actually. There's a lot of new stuff in the new ECMA drafts. There's exception handling. There's a case statement. There is a new equality operator for triple equals. There's the regular expressions are standard. We had to standardize Perl style regular expressions with ISO. That was not a first. Yeah, JavaScript's now an ISO standard. Good thought. So if you want to talk about problems in the language itself, ECMA owns that. But the module owner for the JavaScript engine, Netscape is a good place to start talking about that stuff. Mike McCabe owns that with myself and somebody else. If you mean who owns the name?
No, you already answered.
Okay, good. I stopped talking. Lib layout is the current thing that you don't want to go near, which is the layout engine that's in the 4.x browsers and maybe in the 5.x browsers, depending on how well the layout goes. There's other stuff in other directories. There's Mariner, which is all the nice, cool reflow stuff. There's bits and pieces to handle form and behavior. There's libmocha. No. Libmocha is the thing that ties the really hairy layout engine to the JavaScript engine. It's the things that give you these nifty security bugs sometimes where there are weird interactions. They all get fixed, I think. Yeah, so layout's really hairy, and layout gets less hairy and it lives in this directory, which is just called layout. Nice and simple, easy to find. And that's where the stuff that used to be called Raptors. The italicized elements there are relative URLs to www.URIs, I guess, www.mozilla.org, and that's where you find documentation on those sections. XPCOM is in the XPCOM directory. It's the cross-platform COM implementation. So how many here have seen the Netscape C++ portability guidelines? They're a fun read. They're, I guess, about 12 pages. And the first like 15 things are, don't use this because your compiler won't do it. It'll use platform. So don't do that because nobody does it right, and this sort of stuff. XPCOM is sort of what happens if you take COM and apply the Netscape C++ portability, or C++ minimization, as we call it, guidelines to it. It's a couple interfaces. It runs on all the platforms. It's pretty straightforward. There's some really good documentation on that on the site. XML and RDF, they're in there now under modules. XML and modules RDF. The XML parser, sorry?
Yep.
The XML stuff comes from the esteemed Jim Clark. It's the XPath parser. The RDF stuff is, I think, built internally on top of that by R.B. Guha and maybe Robert Churchill. That's all in there. You're going to see more XML and RDF stuff spreading throughout the code. We're going to do preferences and bookmarks and maybe address books, all that good stuff. Threading, Jamie talked about a little bit about threading. On the client, we aren't threaded, but we are. Jamie had this great quote, because he gets all of the quotes, on Mozilla, one of the Mozilla groups, that if it looks like it's threaded, it is. If the user interface appears that way, you seem to do multiple. On one CPU machine, that's all you're getting anyway. The threading model in the client, there are no native threads used. One of the reasons for that was this need to protect X from itself. And one of those was Java interaction. We needed to catch up a lot of things, and they were all done in user space. There have been efforts to do native threading on, actually the only one I know of is with glibc on Linux, which was not successful in the full client because it was built by Netscape because of the Java issue, I believe. But it could be attempted again if people are looking at that. In order to build, if all the source just worked, in the other parts of the engine, to switch it to use native threads is like two defines on your command, and carefully it's the right way and all this. So that's like the stuff that you might be interested in from the perspective of pulling it out and doing things in your own project with it. Hopefully, the only thing you need to do in the future to do that kind of stuff is XPCOM, and if you're using GDL stuff in BTU, XPCOM, which you have to write down because he announced it, which would let you plug, like the layout engine and the netlib and JavaScript will be soon, are all XPCOM plugins that implement various interfaces. It's actually pretty cool. Next slide. Yeah? Or that way. Oh, stay with the yes?
Did you change the layout so it supports anti-alias?
That's not a layout issue. What we should
It's a fun.
Oh, did you change the layout engine so it supported anti-alias attacks? And the answer is no, because the layout, not layout engine's issue. There are 4 parts to it. There's the netlib stuff, which gets you the content, essentially. There's the HTML parser that puts out the things, and then there's the layout engine, which essentially just does flow and management of stuff. The font rendering is individual platforms and stuff. Different issue. I have no idea. I don't really know. There are bugs probably filed in Mozilla. I don't know what the state of those individual things are. I'd like to get to the next slide, though, because it's sort of important to me. There we go. Click on the next slide here. We'll get right down to the stuff. And it really is the last slide. Click. No, click. Getting starts back in. You did stuff that was cool, we went back. CBS, everybody can read it. A smaller subset that everybody can write it. Module owners, there's a page there. That link doesn't work, although I have a copy of it on this somewhere. If you make a patch, you find all the directories that it touched, and you find the people who own those directories, which is listed helpfully in the module owners page, and you send your patches to them. And you also hopefully post them to this Mozilla.patches to the group around the list. That's where they get their patches from the inside. That's where they get their patches from the inside now as well. Netscape actually works internally on the client the way we want everybody to work externally on the client, because it has to be for this to be a success. The NPL, really quickly, again, the NPL's team boundary is file. So if you have something you want to add, your company has some proprietary thing, Adobe, you want to do some PDF engine, you want to use a source for it, put your stuff in your files. Any changes you have to make to Netscape, Mozilla, NPL files, you have to come back. So if you copy code from one of those files to another file, it's generally a file of granularity 10. That's like a simple thing to talk about with anything with this stuff. Naming your creation. Don't use the word communicator, don't use the word Netscape, don't use the word navigator. I recommend against using the word Java. Really, yeah. Mozilla things are okay. Qtscape was probably not a wise choice. I think our legal department is correct things to that. I don't think it's a big issue right now. Naming things Zilla is okay. Pretty much the only thing to be careful of is just not, Netscape didn't release the trademarks, right? You can't call things GTK Netscape. I don't think you can get it right now, communicator. You want to talk, I wouldn't just do it on a dare. Yes, and they're big lawyers. I mean, to talk to you, like an example of how picky people are about names. When we were getting ready to release the Mozilla.org site, we started getting these calls from this company called Toho, which owns, of course, the Godzilla trademark, had this little movie coming out this year. And they were really worried that we have this, like, lizard-like thing. If you click this button, you'll see it. If you click something, you won't see it. Anyway, not that lizard, the little green one, which they got all upset about our legal department figured their entire company. So we sorted it out. Yeah, so you've got to be careful with that stuff. If you're doing, little personal hacks, it obviously don't mean anything. It's free stuff if you're going around. You're probably okay, but if you want to do something, you want to ship a product based on a bundle of product based on it, you should be careful about that stuff. It would be a shame for people to have a bad experience with this only because there wasn't branding involved. So that's it. That's all I got. Sort of a little bit.
Are your legs?